campaign as well. We do a lot of destination services. So we offer mobile-friendly passes for those that are in market. We still offer a printed travel magazine. A lot of DMOs kind of went away from this in 2020, but we really see a need and hear that people want to continue having printed travel magazines. We also do a digital version of it. And then those downtown walking maps that Cliff alluded to earlier. And then we do a little bit of traditional advertising still as well, a lot of print, and then some sponsored content in the Seattle Times. I wanted to kind of touch on our top drive and fly markets for especially leisure travelers. Through our database, which is also through Datafy, we're able to analyze not only just like where are they coming from, but on demographics, their spending habits, license plates, PDX, and different travel indicators. And they were able to analyze that our top market is Seattle-Tacoma area. That has kind of been our market for as long as I've been here. And they are far enough away that they're willing to stay in our hotels. And we have a lot of influence there. Portland still likes to come over the river and stay in our hotels. And then Spokane is about 50-50 fly and drive. And yet the Yakima area is also a top drive market. And then for fly, it's the first time we've really been able to target these one flight stops. We found through a Datafy advertising campaign through an incremental lift study, which compares to a sample size, that we were 4 times people that saw our ads in these markets were 4 times more likely to come into the destination than if they didn't see our ads. So these markets are LA, Phoenix, San Francisco, Dallas, and Denver, and we're still kind of learning their patterns. So we're finding that Phoenix will stay longer, but we know that a lot of them might have second homes here or they stay with family in the summer. So we're finding that Dallas and Denver tend to have a higher correlation with our lodging properties. So we're really learning those markets for the first time. And so our messaging is a little different in those locations. And I think we'll skip the videos because
Yeah, we'll make sure you guys have a copy of the presentation so you can take a look at the videos. One thing I wanted to highlight there is the stuff on the right-hand side. If Erica had come into this room 10 years ago and said she was going to be advertising in LA, Phoenix, Dallas, and Denver, I probably would have needed to fire her, because the idea of penetrating a market that size is incredibly expensive the way that things used to happen. The way that you'd have to spend a ton of money to be able to get enough eyeballs on your campaign to have anything happen. But nowadays we can be very, very targeted with our efforts, and she's seeing the results. It's really an interesting shift in terms of how the work that we're able to do.
I just wanted to use this as an example of kind of that content creation. This almost turned into sort of a passion project for our marketing team, but we hired a local company, Harder Creative, to create this series that focuses on some of Vancouver's communities. It was really cool to get into these communities and partner with them and showcase what they offer to not only our community and the residents here, but what they can offer to visitors to make sure that every traveler feels welcomed when they come here. And then in turn, we took all of those clips and it created a new destination video for us that we can use. They're already being used in paid social media and through our campaign with Adara. And then Datafy in the fly markets, and then also at the Volcanoes halftime ads, which get seen by visiting teams that subscribe their families from all over, and then also on our Expedia link page.
This is work we're really proud of. You know, the idea of destination marketing, it's pretty easy for us to put up pictures of people drinking wine and beer and enjoying themselves and laughing and stuff like that. But this has really been a great opportunity for us to tell the story of Vancouver through the people that live here. And it really has been, to your point, it's been a passion project. It's really been an effective way for us to get to know our community in ways that we probably would not have been able to do. Oops. And yeah, so unfortunately, we can't show you guys that. All right, let's talk about what's happening like in real time. I have the words up here that say travel industry slowdown. That's not necessarily true. At the same time that we're seeing slowdown, we're seeing in the marketplace, certain hotels are doing really well, but we're also seeing now a lot of disparity. You can see the headlines here, everything all the way up to and including the one at the bottom there that announces or talks about the travel ban that took effect a couple of days ago. Last week also, U.S. travel and their efforts for at the national level to bring people here from overseas, their budget's going to be cut by 80%. And so it's a really interesting time across the marketplace. What we're seeing, as I said, though, is that there is the emergence of what we're calling disparity in the marketplace, where we're seeing some hotels, and this is anecdotally because we don't have the research money to spend a lot of dollars figuring this out exactly. Anecdotally, though, we can speak to folks in East Vancouver that would say that from January until now, their hotel is off by 35% year over year. And then you can talk to other hotels that would say that they're having the best year ever. And so that is something that is really, really interesting to us in terms of the marketplace. It's something that we need to really pay a lot more attention to. Let's see here. And it also kind of then shows in terms of the results of the marketplace. These are hotel performance graphs that show year-to-date performance through April, which is the most recent month that we have data for. The top part of that table is our data from Clark County and Vancouver, Washington. The rectangle around that kind of shows some of the stats that are highlighted here locally. All the way over on the right-hand side of that top graph there, you can see the percent change from year-to-date 2024. And all those numbers are basically in negative. That's where we're seeing the slowdown by several percentage points across the board. The bottom graph there is given to us by the State Tourism Department. It kind of talks about the different regions of the state. We are lumped into the Southwest Plus region, and there you can kind of see same kind of sluggish figures. A lot of times when I show these figures in the past, those numbers are opposite, where instead of negatives, they're pluses, for 3 and 4% growth here and there. But we're seeing definitely some sluggishness in the marketplace. This data is a little bit old, several weeks old, going back to May 10th, but it kind of shows in real time, week to week, what we're seeing there. It is volatile. Looking at the differences from year to year, we're seeing that every single week, we're having to kind of take a look at what is going on in the marketplace, whether it's what groups were here last year that were not here this year, what was the weather last year, what was going on this year, what were the economic circumstances last year at this particular time, to try and figure out what is going on here, because it is swinging all over the place. The rectangle that's in the middle there on the left-hand side where it says run 28, that's giving you an idea of in the last 28 days, on average, what's going on. So you can see occupancy percentage is off by 5%, 5.1%. RevPAR, which is revenue per available room, is off by 6%, and demand, which is the number of rooms being sold, is off by about 5%. This is showing us, again, the sluggishness is real. All that being said, in the last several weeks, with summertime coming on and so forth, we're seeing some improved performance in the last several weeks for sure. So we got a report just like this morning, that same run 28 figures. Those things are now down to more like off by 2%, off by 1%, that type of stuff. Summertime is going to help this sluggishness, but it still is real, and you can see it kind of in the data. At the same time, at the state level, we are going to not be able to receive benefit of the support from the State Tourism Office in the way that we have in the past. They are going through versions of extreme budget cuts. They are reliant on, I think it's called general fund money through the state legislature, which has obviously been really, really painful for them. And so they, in 2025, are having to pass a revised budget where they're going to be really, really slowing down all of their advertising, all of their different factors like that. But for 2026, their budget's been cut at the knees. They will be able to keep the lights on. They will be able to pay their employees, but there will be no advertising. There will be no social media, no press, all those type of things are going to go away. We take advantage in Vancouver of a lot of co-ops. The data that you see there that shows us the results of tourism for 2024 is a co-op that is given to us by the State Tourism Office. That likely is going to go away. Erica's ability to do those Datify campaigns in real time is based on a statewide co-op that we take advantage of, that she is now going to have to pay for out of her pocket. And so we're going to see this type of stuff start to roll uphill. All that being said, state office also has, through the legislature, in the process of pulling together what they're calling a statewide assessment model, where they're looking at all the different segments of tourism, from accommodations to restaurants, to ski resorts, to golf courses, to rental cars, to whatever it is. There's 20 different segments that we're looking at. And we're talking about building an assessment model, not unlike what is done with the Wine Commission, the Apple Commission, and different things like that, where you're assessing the bills that patrons are paying to help them pay for this effort. This summer, there'll be industry leaders from all around the state going to Olympia to meet to try and cobble together this assessment model, which then would take effect in 2027. But for now, the state tourism office is in real serious jeopardy. And unfortunately, that's a recurring movie. About 10 or 12 years ago, the state tourism office was cut dramatically, and we've been doing our best over the last 10 years to build it back. But this is also in a precarious place. Let's take a look at also what we're looking at for the future. For 2026, and actually for right now, we're in the process of looking at increasing the TPA. The tourism promotion area, which is TPA, the acronym or whatever, is our primary revenue source. We also come to this room for lodging tax grants, which is our secondary revenue source. But you can kind of see here, let's see, so give you an overall idea what the TPA is all about. If you stay in Christie's Hotel tonight, you're going to pay $2 on your hotel bill that goes directly to Visit Vancouver to do our work. That $2 fee was instituted in 2004, which was 21 years ago. And so we've been doing our work with a funding mechanism that is over 20 years old and needs to be updated. So we're in the process of looking to increase that fee from $2 to $4, which is done by going to the local hotels and asking for their support. If we're able to be successful, you can see kind of where we stand in terms of our budget. Let's see here, that middle of the screen there talks about competitive funding, and you can see those two highlighted lines. The lower of the two highlighted lines is Visit Vancouver's budget, where we stand now at about $2 million. If we would be successful, we would move up to that darker orange line. So again, we're not asking to do anything but to kind of make ourselves a little bit more competitive. At the bottom, you can see the effective tax rates on a $200 hotel room, and we're at the bottom end of that spectrum there. Again, on the far left, you can see where we are currently. The other orange highlighted block there is what would happen to that same tax rates if we were to get the $4 fee. Again, we feel like we still maintain ourselves very, very competitive position. You can see over on the right-hand side kind of where we stand in terms of our polling on the data there to try and be successful. If we were to be able to get the assumed yes and the possible yes, which we're in the process of doing right now, we'll be short just a little bit in terms of what we need to be able to be successful, which means we just would be able to speak to the other folks in the unknown category and hope we'll be able to be very successful there. Again, this would double the TPA budget from about $1.3 million to about $2.6 million overnight, and would allow us to really, really do a lot of the work that we would like to be able to do today, but we are unable to, just primarily because of funding. I think we'll close out with, did you want to say something, Ken?
No, I was gonna see if you wanted questions now or when you were done, but it looks like you're wrapping up.
Oh yeah, we'll do 2 more slides and then we'll do some questions and conversation. A very high level idea of what you're looking at for the future, and you too, and then we'll be finished.
Yeah, just looking forward to the future. We are in talks with some different investment entrepreneurs, I should say, about maybe some sports venue development. Part of that is looking at past studies of need for opportunities and where we could develop something. Hotel inclusion, again, just really kind of getting more involved with the hotels and our city, right? When there is a tour or a site coming in, including others from the city, right? Whether it's council members or different restaurants, partners, just to show that we as Vancouver would like the business here and that we are all working together. And then just Coffee Connect, something that's new, was trying to meet monthly with our hotels and letting them know what's going on. So part of that can be anyone, actually, hotels and facilities, to let them know. For example, this at the end of this month, coming beginning of July, is a big group over across the river that will affect the area, and what we can do to make sure that the event goes well.
When you say sport venue, what's an example of a type of venue?
Okay, I'll try. A venue can be, for Vancouver, it can be a field where you have cross-country activity and so forth. What we've engaged in the last maybe 90 days is a conversation with the city and county parks, with the idea of, in both examples, they have what they would kind of consider to be underutilized spaces within their portfolio and so forth. And so what we're finding is, and we've been approached by what is, I guess, loosely called venture capital firms that have organized together to do this sports venue development. So we'll be talking with somebody who's got money. We'll be talking with somebody who specializes in different turf different surfaces. And we'll talk with somebody who's into the idea of construction of public-private ventures and so forth. And the idea is, if we were to facilitate a study on our behalf to examine the feasibility of this type of activity, let's say you take Vancouver Lake or Lake Vancouver, I can't believe it. Vancouver Lake, I'm sorry, I'm not saying that right. That is an economic engine that really, with some small investments to Laura's point, with some lanes and some scoreboards and some better parking access or whatever, all of a sudden, we could turn on about 20 more events at that lake. And so feasibility studies would study the idea of these particular areas. And, the county, I think, has 10,000 acres under their portfolio, and I think they have 17 different underperforming contracts with little leagues that can't afford to buy new lawnmowers and things like that. And what we'd be talking with them about would be to be redeveloping some of these sites. And what we found is that the city and county parks at this current moment love the idea, but are not quite in a position to be able to say, yes, let's go ahead and push our cards out there and do that. But there's something that we have teed up, and it's something that we think really could be a beneficial path to run down. All right, Eric, you want to close us out?
Yep.
Terry has a,
Well, there's been a couple.
oh, there's been a couple.
So that's why I was like, do you want questions now or later? So
Yeah,
do you just have like one more slide?
this is the last slide,
Wait,
and then we'll do questions, okay? Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, next year, we're looking at a new website. Ours is in dire need. Ours is about 9 years old, and it's recommended every 5 years. We're looking at a minimum of probably 100K, and it's a 10-month process. So there's some like behind the scenes stuff like site speed and everything that's really can only be remedied by a new website. Ours is just pretty old. So we're looking at that. Last year, our website had over 2.5 million views with from 914,000 users. And I really just want something that can support these like Oregonian performance display campaigns that are driving over 100,000 users to our website. We need a website that can really give those resources to people and campaigns that are driving people there. And then we need to stay in these markets that we're kind of new in. So we're using retargeting and lookalike audiences and things like that. And we're learning that travel behavior. So I really want to stay in these markets. We're nearly always on, meaning January through December, having some sort of campaign running. And so to be able to continue that would be amazing. In the past, like when I first started, we were really only like June through August. Maybe September. So it's really cool to be able to expand that to off season and need periods. And then in terms of destination services, Cliff cued me in on a new term that I didn't know called, Mission Creep. And I think without the funding, those are the first things to go. So it's those destination services that once we get people here, how do we have so many requests for those downtown walking maps, and those will be kind of the first things to go, the passes, possibly even the travel magazine. And so just maintaining those destination services for when people arrive would be great.
It's a shame you can't show all your fancy videos.
I know,
People
but
love your videos.
that's okay.
But that is the state of tourism. Let's talk. I know that we've got several questions that were teed up, and Kim, you want to go ahead and figure out the best way to do that?
Yeah. Janet, if you want to go ahead, and then Terry.
Yes, couple of questions. Actually, I have 3 questions. So the assessment that you were talking about with that like the Apple Commission and whatnot has, those are federal marketing orders. How would that play out? Because that's a requirement for everybody, a mandatory participation. Is that what you're looking for with the assessment?
You're talking about the state tourism office, correct?
Yeah, the federal checkoff programs that you alluded to, that the Apple Commission and others that they go through their state and federal agencies for a mandatory participation in that.
It is not a federal mechanism. What they're looking at is a statewide mechanism where via a petition process, let's say we are all restaurants, okay? And we would say, hey, if you are a restaurant, we want to assess your customers 0.2% on the hotel bill, meaning $100 bill would be like a 20-cent assessment on the bottom of your hotel, bottom of your restaurant bill. In order for that assessment to be successful, the petition would need to go to all of us, and more than half of us would need to agree to it. And if more than half of us were to agree to it, then that would become part of the effective state law that would build this state tourism account, I guess is a short version. Does that help?
Yeah, It does help. I would be curious, the hospitality, I think the last numbers were that most of the hospitality has a net of 1.5%. So I'd be curious where they would be in alignment with that, or have you already talked with them?
Well, it's a group of hospitality leaders that will kind of go and represent their different sectors in a room to try and build a model that would then be kind of floated out there for petitions and so forth.
Perfect. And the maps, if the maps were the first ones to go now, we're one of the consumers of the maps because we get people in here every single day that ask for them. Is there ever an evolution to where one can be auto updated online and we can print them out in an 8.5 by 14 or larger as needed so that any of the updates are almost real time or
That's a really
close
good.
to it?
And it's funny because as we do our work, like we will spend time throughout the year getting ready for a visitor magazine. We'll highlight different local vendors. And inevitably, by the time we go to press and by the time the things are printed, somebody may not be in business anymore. And so
Right.
the point about the downtown walking mats, I mean, Eric, you might want to try and look at that as a possibility.
Yeah, we do have a digital version. Our art director usually updates it when we update the printed version, which we're trying to do this quarter now. It's hit or miss. Maps are not our art director's favorite thing in the world. They're really difficult, actually. And so, but I will definitely bring that up with her. Just maybe an option to update it a little bit more frequently and see what it's like to kind of like press Control P on that that digital version.
Right. Okay. And then my last question is so the TPA increase, I think we were talking to a counterpart of ours in Spokane Valley. And I think they increased theirs from 2 to 4 as well. Do you happen to know if they had, if they didn't have any pushback? And
The Spokane example is a little different because they split it in half where they have a TPA in downtown or regular Spokane, which went from $2 to $5. And then they had what they call Spokane Valley, which went from $2 to $4 because, the nature of the destination said that they didn't want to assess everybody in the same sense. Also in Spokane is the Spokane area or Spokane Valley Sports Commission. And so the money is split between the sports agency and the destination marketing agency. And it's only been in effect for 1 year. I don't know because they just changed their CEO about a year ago. I don't know about what the process, how it went to get that signed. In Walla Walla, they've never had a TPA, and they went out there and found an incredibly overwhelming success. People are very excited about it there. In Vancouver, I would tell you that the temperature is a little mixed.
right. Great. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Terry, I think you had a couple.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Kimberly, thank you for sending the slides. On the slide where you talked about year-to-date hotel market performance, slide 30 of 37. I just had an observation that I wanted to make sure everybody saw. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, I'll wait till we get there. Thank you. So if you look in the below the box, it's Clark County, Vancouver. If you look at Portland sold more rooms now, 1.4 rooms. But if you slide over and look at their rate, it's because they're lowering their rates. So Portland is becoming far more competitive than it has been. They still have a long way to recover, but meeting planners and folks are now considering that. I know that we've been competing for pieces of business with Portland now that we didn't used to in the 2 years I've been here, that now because meeting planners and others are looking at, hey, what can we do for the biggest value, that we're seeing that. So Portland is undercutting. I mean, our rates are still pretty similar. As you see, we're actually a little bit under them, but Portland's normally quite a bit higher. So that's interesting that they're lowering their rates to just get some of that business back. So that was just an observation.
Yeah.
The other thing is I'm going to just put here in the comments, since Cliff, I'll send this to you and your team separately as well. But so when you talk about the facilities, here's an example of a facility in Centralia, Washington called the Sports Hub that has indoor baseball fields, indoor softball fields. It's crazy what they do. And they have so many basketball courts, volleyball courts, pickleball courts. It's insane. And this facility has kept that Centralia, Chehalis community, the hotels, they don't have enough hotels there to keep up with the demand for this. So a facility like this, if you were to be able to get that private investor that partners, and they're a membership-based organization, so the hotels join that, kind of thing. It's the promotion that they're able to do is off the hook as far as keeping the hotels busy, and just the kind of thing that, especially since they have the indoor baseball fields, especially when we had the fires a couple years ago and all the smoke, they kept playing baseball because teams wanted to keep playing, and they were so booked out because of their indoor fields. It's really remarkable what can happen with that public-private partner investment. So, but they weren't questions; they were just observations.
Yeah, sports is recession proof, right? As parents, we still need to get our kids to their games. And so that is what we're seeing there. And it is a powerful, powerful market segment. Although, as Laura alluded to, it's also kind of a clunky one too, because sports organizers tend to, have bigger estimates than their actual events tend to be. And so we're having to kind of mitigate and navigate that as well too. But yeah, that's something, sports venue development is something we see as a really, really interesting priority for us for the future, should we be able to be successful.
I mean, Washington County as well, David, is that his name, the CEO over there? Yeah. If you talk to him, I mean, the facilities that Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation have, and the way that they market those and fill hotels there is another example. It's not, that's more of a public partnership because THPRD is our public facilities, but yeah, and Hillsborough Parks and Rec, same thing. So it's amazing the level that they can take out there. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that perspective, and downtown hotels may not necessarily be the most beneficial in terms of sports rooms and that type of stuff. And so I appreciate your perspective as well, because that definitely can benefit the entire marketplace, this type of sports development. Any other questions for us? Oh, all right.
I just like to comment.
Yeah, please.
I know I worked very closely with Visit Vancouver, but the outreach that they've been able to do in the last 5 years, they've really just changed their whole approach on how they've engaged with our community and our city. So I thank you for that. They're very open to collaboration, and even with, Erica's joined a board with Vancouver's Downtown Association. So really trying to help as we continue to have these conversations about how do we support these events and festivals and educate them, but also support them on the marketing side of it too. And then open to any of that on the group side as well. Just really trying to find new business, different type of business. And I appreciate that.
Thank you for that comment. It takes all of us, doesn't it? Yeah, we've leaned into the idea that this community is a really special place, and it really takes all of us to be able to move the needle. And so we love the work that we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right.
We'll move on to the next agenda item number 4, which is a couple of different miscellaneous topics. So I'll hand it over to Chris to tee up.
Keep calling them miscellaneous, just wherever we are on various topics. Right, let me kind of work through this. A lot of this will be similar. It's just kind of rounding out our conversations or giving you updates. The first here these are more, well, I guess some updates, some questions we'll tee up, and I'll have Taylor help me with one of them. The first one is transit and parking contract requirements. I think it's more informing, but I'm open to feedback or questions if I need to kind of reconsider this. So many of you, well, I'm sure a lot of you know, we are changing how we're doing parking. That comes through an access, mobility, and parking plan that was adopted by council in, I want to say February, if I remember correctly. And so things like weekend enforcement are implementation elements of that. One of the things that we're really trying to do is help residents, visitors, communities be smarter about parking. And so some of this plays into the events and festivals that LTAC funds, particularly, and our parking district is only downtown. So this is really a conversation about our central city. One of the things I guess I'm proposing here is for any event or festival, particularly, it may be all of them, but certainly the ones downtown, as part of the contracting that we do. So once you make recommendations, council approves, we award, we actually have individual contracts with each event or festival. Is one of the requirements we're gonna have now is around promoting two things: transit or non-single occupancy vehicle transportation options, and off-street parking facilities. What we're trying to do is get more people who come downtown to events and festivals to not use their car. And so the city, my department, our transportation department will be working on, and C-Tran in particular, working on just making sure easily accessible information is available to event and festival organizers. Part of their contract will be that they promote non-auto ways of getting downtown. So whether that's posting on their website, or if they do newsletters, or they're promoting, however they promote their event, is really kind of pushing transit and other non-single occupancy vehicle transportation options. Similarly, what we really want, now that we have weekend enforcement and most events are on the weekend, is people who attend events tend to stay a little longer. They're not coming downtown to, for 45 minutes, an hour, maybe to go to lunch or to visit a retail establishment. They're coming down for multi-hour, if not the full day. Is we need to encourage that, or they're going to be required in many cases to park off street, because years past, you just park on street. You could stay there all weekend long. That has bigger issues around turnover and accessing our establishments. So we're going to be requiring our event and festival organizers to also promote our off-street parking facilities. Assets we already know. We have garages downtown. We got several on the waterfront. Zoom Info's opening. I think they're open now for public. We are also, as part of our parking plan, in starting the conversations with private lot and garage owners, where public parking isn't accessible, to open that up for public use, or portions of it for public use, or for public use on things like weekends when they basically sit empty. But long way of saying, we're going to be requiring events and festivals to promote these types of this information to help kind of the behavior change that will be needed for events and festivals. That will come at the contracting stage of this. We do have a question in our application about how do you, one of our sustainability questions. We have one around kind of more recycling, composting, another around transportation. I may slightly change the wording of that question to get slightly better information. But what I'm talking about here is, okay, you've been awarded, here's going to be one of the expectations you have is to promote these things. So when I pause there with that, any concerns with us doing this? I don't think it's necessarily anything you have to approve, but I want to make you aware of it.
Yeah, I had so I like the concept and idea, absolutely. However, one of the things that I brought this up when, the parking plan has come up to council a couple times is the issues with wayfinding right now. And I know that part of the parking plan is to improve that. So people actually know where these facilities are at. But for these events, are we going to be able to, I think it is too much to ask them to figure it out on their own. If we can develop this extended parking map and say, hey, here's a link on the website. Can you please promote this? Or can you put this on your social media or send this flyer out to everybody? Here's already a pre-made map of all of these extended parking locations. And similarly with the transit as well.
Yep.
Like have something pre-made that they can edit or whatever, but it makes it really easy.
Yeah, sorry, I should have been clear. We're gonna give them the information.
Okay.
The requirement under contract is you have to post it, promote it, and do those things. We're not expecting them to figure this world out. We're gonna do that for them. So we're gonna work with C-Tran and make sure they have like a nice little map or a link to maybe just sits on C-Tran already that they can use. Similarly with the off-street parking is a map. We actually have a digital map that was created for Main Street Promise that includes every parking spot downtown. But we may have to modify that because we're trying to get people not to park on the street and to park in garages for events and festivals. So yes, we will be giving them the information and any material we will create. So you can just use this and put this on your website. Or if you want to kind of tweak it slightly, we'll work with them to do that.
We'd like to reflect that information as well too. Once that's developed, just give it to us.
Sure, yes.
Incorporate it.
Absolutely. Yep.
I have a question about loading, unloading. You know, most of them have tables and tents and foods. Is there going to be some capabilities for them to be able to pull up for X number of time and get themselves set up for these festivals?
Yeah, we're actually working through this with the farmer's market. So yeah, you can load and unload. But if you're a vendor, you can't park there.
Right.
Or let me put it this way, technically you can park on the street, but you're every 2 hours, you're gonna have to go back and fill the meter. We're working this out with the farmer's market now on some off-street lots, including one of ours. That's a little bit more towards the bridge for vendors to park in there. We're testing this out with the farmer's market kind of real time. But yeah, you'll be able to load and unload. You just won't be able to park there permanently.
Christy, you had a question?
So I 100% support this and agree with, Arliss's, recommendations there because it is one of the most challenging obstacles of selling our destinations for large events. The limited resources that we have to be able to give the meeting planners in advance to send that out and help support us in the process. But, what we have seen time and time again is that getting them off the street, I understand the reason for that, but do we have the capacity in the garages for 8-hour parking?
I'd have to go back and look at let me put it this way, we have 14,000 parking spots downtown,
Including the garages.
including the garages. Now, a lot of those are still on street. We're trying to move them off. We have the numbers. I don't have them right in front of me. But the garage over here has, I think it's 2,000, 1,500 over here. Ours has 2,000. Part of these, what we're calling shared parking agreements with private lot owners, is we open up more there. So that gets somewhat down the road. Doesn't mean you're prohibited from parking on the street. It just means we're trying to encourage those coming to events. We're trying to point out the assets where we prefer them to park. They can technically still park.
Sure, and the waterfront locations help that, but when we've sat down with planners to really figure out if they have a convention with 500 people not staying overnight, it's really hard to even find 200 8-hour parking spaces within like a 3-4 block radius. And so having that checks and balance to see if these are the size of events that we're looking for that have that extended time, are we offering them the amount that they need?
I mean, we know the occupancy, I don't have it right in front of me, but the parking garage on the waterfront is not full. And you have to pay for parking. It's not free, but you can park 8 hours.
And then in the larger cities, this is probably just a plan for future growth, is that they have maps that you can actually see real-time parking. I think that our community is growing to accepting parking, but it is still very frustrating.
Some of our, we have technology investments in our parking plan that will have to just come in later years as we roll kind of things out, but those are definitely things we are looking into. We're not able to do that kind of now in 2025 and probably not likely 2026, but in later years, we're looking at technologies like that. Yes. And where you could actually see perhaps on your phone which garages have empty spaces, what are the rates? Those are bigger investments, bigger projects for us to work on, but those are all in the parking plan.
Um,
Jan, that's Jan.
it just kind of echo your thoughts too, just as a community member and being kind of active on around the Couve, the Facebook group page. There's an enormous amount of frustration over parking and the concerts at the waterfront and they're like, oh, there's all these great things, but we can't find a place to park and or we can't afford the parking rates that are here. So I just think to what you said, once we get this information to share it more broadly with the public would be helpful, even if it's on around the Couve site, those sites where people are so in love with our city and so frustrated with the parking. So a better education for just the community members.
I'll respond a little bit. So the dynamic you just raised, particularly on the weekends, is one reason we're doing 7-day-a-week enforcement is what our officers would found, and we had all the data for it, is on the weekends, people just park on the street, leave their cars there for 48 hours sometimes. Which means if you're coming downtown for something, it's full. The reason you do weekend enforcement is to encourage the turnover.
Sure.
To create more space, which causes frustration because people like the freeness. But they then would also complain about no open spaces. Our early data, we've only been doing this since June 1st, so less than 2 weeks, is we're seeing much more significant turnover on the weekend. So it's probably too early to call it a trend. But I did talk to the farmers market and some of their visitors said, oh, I was able to find more parking. One, because of the turnover, and two, vendors used to just park on the street. We're getting them off. So we're actually seeing positives. At the same time, people are like, now I have to pay and no one wants to pay more. So we get kind of both sides of it. But some of this is, we're going to be working on parking for the next 20 years here. And whether it's investments in technologies, new assets, encouraging people to just come downtown in very different ways. It's all kind of part of that. So we're rolling out things with the bigger vision, but to your point, part of what we want to do is give them the information.
Sure.
Here's where I'd start first if you're coming downtown
Yeah,
for it.
educate them.
Yep.
And this will be incredibly helpful with that education, because now they're like, oh yeah, there's that parking thing on the weekend. Oh, I wonder if there's anything on 4 Days of Aloha's website about that, like where I can
Right.
park.
Mhm.
And so I think that's a fabulous thing as we are continuing to move in this direction.
Yep.
Any other questions about this item? I had a question, actually, just come up, about hotels. That's not part of the contract now, right? That they somehow share about where hotels are? Right? Something to think about in the future as we start to consider like what should be required as far as education about accommodations and just infrastructure
Yeah.
for people's stays at a location.
Mhm.
Might be something to think about too. I know, you can just like Google or whatever, but I think if people put some sort of map or
Yeah,
like
we can help
something.
point that type of stuff out for sure. We can give you those resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Term limits. Whether you like it or not, you're all gonna be extended to 12/31/2020. Well, assuming council approves it, which I doubt this is the most controversial thing in the world.
Probably want.
Because as you know, term limits expire end of September, and that's right when
Yeah.
you go into the process of making recommendations. So the timing just didn't work. So that is being taken to council on July 7th to permanently move everyone's the timing of the term limits to the end of the calendar year. At that time, some of you will be rolling off, some of you will hopefully be being renewed, and we'll be recruiting for ones. We do have a boards and commissions coordinator. When we get to that point, she's going to be working with council, and council has some subcommittees around this in talking to them about staggering terms so that not everyone comes in at the same time and rolls off at the same time. There are some other kind of legal nuances about technically we need to review board or commission membership annually, so I'm working with Taylor about how we do that, but that's kind of where that is headed through the calendar year, so you guys will be official members as you're recommending. And then we do have a process or at least a conversation to work towards staggering those going forward. All right. Two other things, and I actually have four other things because two things just very recently came up and they're not on my slide, but let me start with this one. We had these conversations around for event and festivals that the applicants needed to be nonprofit. We've had this conversation about what about including for-profit conversations. As with everything, it's a little bit more kind of complex and nuanced than it may seem up front. Taylor, I don't know if you want to kind of tee this up.
Yeah. Happy to. As you'll recall from our last meeting, we talked about this for-profit idea as being kind of apparently kind of a self-imposed limitation under our own rules and not one that is required by statute, at least as we're interpreting it and looking at it. We have done some outreach to our MRSC that kind of deals with these issues statewide with jurisdictions as well as, and at their suggestion also with the state auditor's office, because it's been a little while since MRSC and the state auditor had connected on this issue. We recently received feedback from the state auditor's office that suggests we may still need to have some additional conversations to make sure we're on the same page. But beyond that, because these are lodging tax grants are really contracts between the city of Vancouver and the grantee, and it's not between the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee and the grantee. There needs to be a comfort level at the city level with where we land on this statutory interpretation. So essentially what my proposal for next steps would be that we continue to have those conversations at the city leadership level to make sure that there's agreement with that approach. And then if Lodging Tax Advisory Committee would certainly can express a view on whether that the city should move in that direction, or would, if defensible, whether the committee would support that approach, or whether that's not in the lodging tax. Even if it were possible, it's not something that you particularly care about. So either way, the direction on that would be informative, but I just wanted to highlight that this needs a little further discussion at the city leadership level before it can be implemented. Partly because if we opened up this grant program to for-profits and there wasn't that comfort level at the city level, it would end up
You'd have to
unwinding some things happening that would go through that had already happened.
Before I say anything, Janet, you have a comment?
Yeah, I would just say, it would, as the discussions are moving along, it'd be good if this group talked about just what the public perception of opening it up to private, the pros and cons of it, so that we can defend it. If we do open it up, I think that's one of the things that I'd worry about. And then are private companies more willing to give more transparency or as much transparency as we're asking for from the nonprofits, post-event reporting and everything? I would assume they are because they're contractually obligated, but it just shifts the intent a bit away from it. So in this time, are we prepared to do that?
Any other comments, questions? On this topic, it sounds like, you need direction because also, don't want to waste your time. If it's something that we ultimately don't want to move forward with. Right now, we're in an interesting time for nonprofits. A lot of them are losing a lot of federal funding. So I personally, I like the idea of looking at this in the future. But right now, I like focusing on nonprofits because they're the ones that are really suffering right now in our community. So I like exploring it, but I think that it could, that's my like vote, I'm only one vote here, would be to pause it.
Agree.
Christine, a question for Cliff, and you may not know the answer because it's a pretty detailed one. But one thing that does come to mind are some of these big sporting events that I could see coming here that have the limitations in some of the facilities that you're talking about. Would some of those, for example, be a for-profit versus a nonprofit?
It's an excellent question. And to start, like Laura mentioned, some of those bid fees are very, very expensive and be the type of things where we would need to have them come in here and request a grant because it would blow up our budget for 1 year, right? So, yeah, I think this is a really interesting question. I think the answer though is that it's going to be a mixed bag. Some of these organizations are definitely organized as nonprofits because they represent the sport, like for college championships and different things like that. But yeah, there's other people out there that are doing this for the idea of for profit. So, anecdotally, I've seen the other side of this where I've worked in destinations where for profit and nonprofit were going after these same dollars. And what happened was, short version, what happened was the destination marketing organization ended up saddled with a bunch of for-profit things that couldn't get approved through the grant process, and local officials wanted to still have them still taken care of and so forth. The for-profit event side of things is a little messy in my experience.
Carla?
Yeah, I was really kind of gonna ask the same thing as Christy. I think we kind of got on this conversation initially because we do know that a lot of these are for-profit that are just using or partnering with nonprofits to get the funding. So just that we keep that in mind, that I think that's kind of how we started this conversation, or this part of it.
Temple?
First, I apologize if I cut out. I'm in transit, but I'm almost to Chehalis, so maybe I can check out the facility Terry was talking about. I expressed my feelings about this at the last meeting, and I generally don't support it. As I gave it more thought, I think that if it were something we were to pursue, being in a position of having nonprofit organizations, especially the very small nonprofit organizations, even those pursuing larger grants that we have in the community, in competition with some potentially large for-profit organizations, could be a really sticky situation. So we would need to have very clear goals for what we're doing with these grants, what we are trying to achieve with them, and policies and procedures for how we do this evaluation. That we have the criteria, but I think that we would actually need some language around our methodology, because for the Janet reference, when we're spending public dollars, we're under increased scrutiny, and government is under even more scrutiny now than ever. I think that I agree with the chair that this might just be a time to pause the conversation and come back to it at another time. But if there is enough support to move this forward, then I would suggest coming up with a strong proposal for justifying why we would want to go forward with this and how it would work, and then taking it to the council to see if it's something that they would support. But right now, I'm not on that committee. Thanks.
Thank you. Christy?
Cliff, can you confirm for us some of the potential new opportunities on the sporting side? Not right now, But if you could just guide this committee to see if there's something that we're not necessarily aware of, and so we can have more of a specific
Like
context.
context is what you're looking at, right? Examples. Okay,
Okay.
yep, I'll make a note.
Thank you.
Guys, good question.
Yeah.
So last year, for the events and festivals, we did have the requirement that the applicant be a nonprofit. I'm hearing kind of, let's keep that for now, and maybe in some future year, we can put more thought to this, or the timing may feel better around that. We did allow for-profit organizations to apply for the marketing promotion category, which is basically marketing. So if you remember, Sprout, was it Sprout? Sprout.
Yep.
Made it applied to kind of do marketing of the waterfront and the pier and those types of things. So we allowed them, saying, yeah, you're not ineligible. We didn't fund them. But any guidance there, just kind of keep that one how it is. And if some kind of private marketing example comes in where they're promoting the destination, it's a little bit different than an event or festival. That's kind of how we handled it last year. We keep it the kind of the same way, and as we assess applications, we can discuss that. Or do you want to make the change that everyone has to be nonprofit?
Anyone have any strong feelings one way or the other? Or medium feelings?
There was only one application last year, so it wasn't like, okay, whereas event festival, you're teeing yourself up for 20 plus of these potentially.
I think it could be a good way to show as a destination that we're welcoming for those for-profits. That was not an event, right? But I could see a for-profit event wanting to help market the destination. And so I think it's a good way to be able to continue to support them in a smaller way.
There's probably not as many nonprofit marketing things. So also like, yeah, opens it up a little bit. Janet?
I think the examples would be good for what types of things would come down for that. When we look at the for-profit, I know that we had, Carla mentioned, we have private race companies under a nonprofit application. Will we end up seeing, I will use the Sprout as an example, Sprout coming in to apply to market the Clover Run or Girlfriends Run, and see a increase of those applications for supporting events, but augmenting the marketing capacity of some of these struggling digital marketing firms. Or it could open up a can of worms if you're creative enough. It's not too far of a stretch to go there.
I was thinking about that, and, I think maybe, I assumed, and maybe this is wrong, or something that we should enforce, that the nonprofit should be the one that is filling out the application, seeking the grant, and does the, interview phase. It should not be essentially they're for-profit contractors, which of course, every event, you're hiring contractors to help with the porta potties or the whatever. And so I think that would be the direction to move forward, so we can try to eliminate, it would be, because it is weird if the contractor is the one doing it. It should be the nonprofit that is from start to finish trying to get the grant.
I agree with those comments, and I feel like it's a good test to see just how involved the nonprofit is in the knowledge of what the grant is supposed to be used for.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing on the marketing program grant opportunity, also nonprofit. Or
Yeah.
that one keep, if they profit come in, that's fine. Event and festival, keep it, the applicant would need to be a nonprofit as it currently stands. That's how it's currently languaged.
Yeah, and we just need to better enforce that it's the nonprofit that is the one interacting with the city, the one that's applying, the one that's showing up to this meeting, if they do the interview. It's not any contractor that they're working with.
Last one, we had talked about, and I'm just kind of closing the loop on language I'm proposing. There was a desire to increase the grant cap amount for the cultural enrichment grant. It was $2,500 last year. Wanted to make sure there were robust enough resources. I went back and I listened to our meeting. This is where I think we landed, but I just wanted to confirm. The new language would be for this particular grant, the cultural enrichment grant, we are targeting grant amounts to not exceed $5,000, but the committee is open to considering requests above that amount should there be unique circumstances or clear demonstration of need. So we're signaling a target in some sort of cap, but we're also open to situational experience, situational information. And we really want to, support this particular event or festival, and they may need more, that leaving it open for the committee to make that call. Does this feel like okay language to you? I think this is what I heard say. I'm just double checking because I'll make this change on the website and in the materials.
Something to complicate it, or maybe, there is now a new grant that the city has that is specifically for culture, arts and heritage. And they did a presentation before council a couple of weeks ago. And, they had started going down the path of offering the grant also to events. And so I had mentioned to them about how we had started this because there was a gap, of trying to ensure that, smaller culturally enriched grants don't get, or events don't miss out, because it does help boost tourism in the sense of being a welcoming, awesome community. And so that's something that we should probably also talk about, is how we're working in partnership with these other grantors, so that we're not duplicating efforts and what that might look like. So that's not really an answer to your question, but something we need to figure out.
Okay. So we would have July to figure that out. Because the scope, if you remember, our new timeline for the grant is August through September 19th. We're creating a bigger window to allow for the office hours and the consultations with Visit Vancouver, create more runway for that. Close them a little earlier so they can do the impact analysis. So, which I'll get to. So July, we have teed up grant promotion and outreach conversation. So we could do that. I will tell you, I met with our internal comms team, and they're part of what we're doing in terms of at least outreach and support is a little bit what you're talking about, is working with the Arts and Heritage Grant app, making sure that we're promoting this grant through those networks and contacts and other things. So we can make it a broader conversation, just talk about what coordination could look like as we promote. Or I guess you could make a call next month to say, let's modify that category. It's just, we're getting real close to going live in
Yes.
that. So is that the recommendation? Tia, both what's our marketing strategy, how we partner with these different groups, and have a conversation about how we would coordinate with them?
Yeah, for this, yeah. I mean, it might not be, we should have a conversation. It's a new grant.
Yeah.
So it's just something that we need to have like a high level discussion about, greatest impact, not duplicating efforts, our mission versus the mission of that grant. So it might not be something this year that happens. It might be next year.
Keep it, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's all the grants that are now at the city and the new ones that have come on board, it's just that bigger, larger
Okay.
picture. Because we've helped support, these cultural events, and they do have an impact on tourism and the mission of this committee, but also, how do we do that in a way that isn't duplicating efforts or, you know, just having that conversation.
Okay, I can maybe tee them up to come and talk about their program.
Yeah,
But,
that'd be awesome.
okay, so next, I was we're over time, so I'm not
Yeah,
gonna do
sorry.
it today, but I did get recommendations from our internal comms team about how to better target our promotion based on some of these kind of big priorities you wanted for 2026. So, you know, cultural community, shoulder season events, locations outside of downtown. And so I can walk through that as well, and maybe I'll talk to our arts and programs team and kind of see if they can kind of just present their thinking. Whether we make a change this year or not, at least we have that knowledge.
Yeah,
So,
because, you know, maybe if they're focusing on this specific type of grant, then, you know, that's the gap and there's gaps, then, you know, we can help fill that gap or vice versa.
Okay.
So that's,
okay.
yeah.
For now, just the money threshold, are you comfortable with how I phrased this? We're targeting 5,000, but we're open if you apply with something different. We'll consider it. You guys will consider it.
And then I remember last time we talked about, you know, if somebody did, you know, they applied for that, but the amount they were asking was pretty significantly higher, that you would help navigate them
Yeah,
to,
we actually,
yeah, to the larger grant. Okay, so that will still continue.
and it wasn't really I mean, it didn't necessarily meet the definition of a cultural
Yeah.
community either. So we're like, you probably should have just applied under here. We let them know and moved them over. So,
That sounds good.
yep.
Cool, you're done.
Yep.
Okay. Any other business before we conclude?
I have a random question. You guys, I think, granted to an Oktoberfest event for this year, and we're not hearing anything in the marketplace. Has anybody heard anything about it?
I've been wondering too.
The
Yeah,
Craig's
just curious, 'cause I mean, I think it's a fun idea.
They're very actively working on it,
Yeah.
but
I'm
they're
just
not,
curious. Yeah, we haven't seen anything.
okay,
Cause we'd love to help promote once they're ready.
excellent. No, I'll tell John and Trina.
Yeah, I've had people ask about is Big Cooper doing something like that, and yeah, so I would love to see that
This is
too.
the Craig Stein one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and I've been telling people, yeah, there's something happening, and
Yeah.
people are already curious.
Like to
It's good. Yeah. Christie?
Yeah, can you remind me what happens if the events don't take place? They don't get their funds, right? But, yeah, so I think that there's probably some applicants that we, approved this last year that, aren't going through with what they kind of committed to, so.
Okay. Yeah, one that have already passed? or-
Yeah, yes, yeah, so.
We'll need to look, that's it. So we refund on reimbursement, so
Mm.
they've spent and they've done an eligible expense. And we know their full grant amount. you
Yeah, I don't think
reimburse
this is
them.
anybody that's submitted any,
Okay,
any bills or whichever.
but there is a scenario that they could do reimbursement and then the event not happen.
Not sure how.
I'm just looking over here, I don't have an answer, that's,
Yeah.
we'll figure that out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, if they don't hold the event, they don't invoice, then that, I think that money just will roll to next year.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
I don't see any members from the public present in person, nobody online. Okay, so, no community communications. So we will adjourn this meeting at 1:36 PM. Thank you, everyone, for staying over a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Cliff, I just told John McLaughlin to reach out to you. But I know they're super, we've been